Okay, so I'm going to be perhaps getting into more of the ins and outs of this rather than so much the guidance, because in my role as the remote Agile GP, it doesn't mean to say that I'm good at ballet, although I do enjoy yoga and headstands. But what it does mean is that I use technology to get into prison sites remotely, so I often don't visit them face to face, but I'm connecting to all the Spectrum sites across the North East and North West and reviewing the notes in the system. So I've probably picked up through fortune of having time, more tricks in System 1 and ways to do things, which is why I like that top tips thing. And I've seen some great top tips, by the way, so well done, keep them coming. I was on the train this morning, and I just want you to all have a look at the Twitter feed. I was just searching for pregabalin. This is a tweet from 2017 from the Northwest. This guy registered in sometime in September 2017. He basically took a picture of pregabalin and said, "Get in touch." And that's in the community, you know. So this guy's tweeting the fact that he's got pregabalin and you should get in touch with him because obviously he wants you to buy it off him. So this is the extent of the blatant trading of this medicine that goes on. I don't know if that's actually prosecutable. It might be evidence. But we should remember that this is fraud and potentially criminal activity. So for myself, I'm actually leading on a Tradeable medication strategy for Spectrum and helping all the sites to have a consistent approach. We want to mainstream this strategy because consistency is what actually wins in prison. If you've got consistent approaches from all the prescribers, all of the teams standing together saying, this is not safe, this is not right, we're not going to do it, then it means that the patient gets a consistent answer and there's no chinks in the armour for them to get through. So we have to think about those people who are most vulnerable in our teams as well, who haven't been informed, who haven't been trained. And also, it means that medico-legally, there's a consensus of opinion, and the way to do that is to have an MDT, a multidisciplinary team meeting. Typically, we might even do that remotely or virtual, and often, Steve will know, I've emailed Steve and said, look, I've seen this patient at Lancaster Farms, I think he's taking too much spice, and I'm thinking about taking him off as antipsychotic because he's just intoxicated every day. And he'll give me a response, which then we feed into the consultation. So it's important to gain that consensus. We've also been piloting these sort of pain and medication review clinics. And it's a bit like a violent patient scheme, but in prison. And so essentially, we're going through all the patients at Lancaster Farms and finding the ones who are most difficult, who are most aggressive, and we're inviting them to a clinic. We're sending them a letter saying that if they don't come, their medicine will be reviewed in their absence, and that it's mandatory to attend, unless there's some sort of significant reason like a legal visit, but they won't get away with that too many times. And then essentially we'll give them enough time to really go over the notes, explain what's going on to them, and we're finding we get some really good positive results from this. I've got some feedback later in the presentation I'll show you from a patient who was really aggressive before, but he almost sort of apologised to us when he came in. He recognised that it limited his access to care. We're producing resources, and I've been referring to Catherine's fantastic posters and postcards about the gabapentinoids, and I have it stuck to the wall, and when I do see people face to face, I point at it, and it's amazing how many prisoners now are aware of the gabapentin issue, and like, oh yeah, I've seen those posters, you know, so they know they're not going to get it before we even start telling them now, which is brilliant. We're trying to produce more resources nationally because this is mainly a northern event, but I know there's some people here from Surrey. Am I right in thinking? Yay, fantastic, welcome. Because it's great to see people are coming from across the country, and I think this is gaining momentum, this sort of movement, and we're hoping maybe this might be reproduced in the south as well, because we're just in the north here, and all of these will be recorded and put on the web so that everyone can see. I'm slightly worried that ex-prisoners and drug dealers might be also using them as a resource, so I don't know how we can defend them against that, but I think they probably know everything we're telling them already. As a good medic, I always like these mnemonics, so I came up with a mnemonic for what we're going to do to keep ourselves safe in these difficult consultations. So, like good Boy Scout, should be prepared. Okay, so P is personal security, R is records review, E is expectations, both the staff, the prisoner and our own. P is pharmacology, A is agenda, ours and theirs. R is referral, E is empowerment, and D is documentation. And I keep hammering on about documentation because who here has been in coroner's court? Okay, yeah, good third of the room. And you know that if it's not written down, it didn't exist. So We need to write stuff down better, and we're only putting ourselves at risk if we don't write stuff down. So the key thing is to think about the actual, where are you doing these consultations? At one of our sites where our GP is actually located miles away from the officer, and he's having some really difficult conversations, and the officer is at the other end of a corridor. And that to me is just, we need more officer attendance, we need more officer security. And as Tim said, personal safety is one of the key things in the hierarchy here that enables us to rehabilitate people. And if it's our personal security at stake, it's also the prisoners as well. So sometimes they'll be being bullied in the waiting room in order to demand medicine from us. So it's really important that the security in the healthcare centre is managed well. And I would encourage you to get onto your prison governors, your healthcare governors, and ask for more security and tell them what is going on if they don't know. They're usually a bit freaked out by what is going on if you tell them, and they often don't know, and often they have been helpful. And we've found at Lancaster Farms, we've had fantastic response from the governor there. He's offered us another officer to run these clinics, which couldn't happen unless I had an officer in the room, because all these guys say, do not see alone, must have an officer present in their warnings. Sometimes panic buttons are located at the opposite end of the room because the electrician managed to fit them in next to the sink, not to your desk. And I think we should get them moved or have some mobile panic button or alarm in that case. And the zero tolerance policy is interesting, isn't it? The NHS says, we have a zero tolerance policy towards aggression. What does that actually mean in practice? And we tolerate an awful lot of abuse and aggression working in these secure environments. We deal with an aggressive, verbally abusive population who the F word is every other word, and so language can't be so much of an issue, but you get a sense of threat sometimes when someone speaks to you. I had a guy the other day who told me that I was facing early retirement, and I asked him what that meant. But these are significant issues. He'd already been IEP'd for that, by the way, by a psychiatrist for doing the same thing. So I haven't actually IEP'd him again, but I'm thinking about it. Now, we need to put in some sort of consistent response on zero tolerance. And we can't say we will never see somebody, but what we can say is that if our staff are at risk, it's unsafe to see someone unless there is a level of physical security there, or unless there is an officer present. So it does actually limit that patient's access to healthcare until their behaviour calms down. The key thing with this is if you do put an alert on saying banned from healthcare, which I wouldn't suggest you do because that's dangerous medically legally, but you might state, very aggressive, can only be seen with officer present or by prior arrangement, and warn the patient that that's what's happening, because otherwise I think, I don't know whether you'd agree with that, Tim, just, we have to make sure that we're not exposing people to risk, and that's our staff and other patients as well. The other thing is have a review date. I had a chap who was threatening to kill me. He was ringing his brother outside of the prison. The police were monitoring his telephone calls, and when he was really, on it, he was really aggressive. He was throwing bits of metal at me through the safe door that he'd broken, and at that point I felt very threatened. Funnily enough, he then came back into prison and apologised to Ian and said, I didn't mean to kill Dr. Sinclair, I was just having a bad time. So, actually was quite pleasant about it, so there I was feeling very threatened. But you've got to review these things. If I'd said I'd never see him again, then, might have been unfair. We've got to have broad shoulders in this respect. And I think about throwable items. I always get that heavy blood pressure machine and put it on the opposite side of the room, because I imagine picking it up and just cracking me over the head with it. I wouldn't want that to happen. People have had things thrown at them. I had a friend who had a computer thrown at him, and unfortunately it was attached to the monitor. It flew back and hit the prisoner and injured him. Didn't do any good to the monitor though. And think about your exit routes. Where are you? Where's the patient? I think often we accept the status quo too much when we come into a new room or a new whatever. But I think if we're dealing with these sort of people, we should be going back to basics and refuse to consult in the room if it's not safe. And don't take no for an answer. It's not safe to be doing things in a dangerous way. It's only going to be bad, both for the prisoner and for yourself. You're putting them at risk if you set up a consultation where it's very aggressive without the correct sort of procedure. You're more likely to get a negative response. They may get extra days on their sentence. So it's a lose-lose if you get hit and they get added days. Think about putting people on governance reports. There's a form next which you can... Has anyone used this report form? Yeah, so I started using this when I got a lot of threats at Lintone because I was known as Dr. No, because I kept on stopping people's medicine and saying no. And so I started putting people a report when they were threatening me, and it actually really calmed down things because people knew that actually we had teeth, we weren't taking any stick from anybody, and this means they go straight to adjudication. It's not just an IEP where they get 3 IEPs and then they see the governor. They go straight to the governor, they get adjudicated, and they may get extra days by the governor, is that right?
Not by the governor.
Not by the governor, the external adjudicator, correct, okay. So the external adjudicator can add up to 6 weeks to their sentence.
42 days.
42 days. So I think, you know, that is a bit of stick for us, because we don't have much stick. The other key thing is I think we need to really keep clear records. The prison records, there's no incentive for us to keep good records except for the fact we're protecting each other and medically legally documenting things well. As Rob said, I would say try and code entries so that they all stack up and you can see things under a similar code. I've started using medication management plan under Rob's suggestion. So if you're doing anything about tradable medication, I would suggest you code it as medication management plan. So you go into the problem list, you hit new problem, you put no end date, you put it as a major, and you then code medication management plan. In the little box underneath, you say why you're doing that. It then comes up, and I'm right in thinking some of that will be reflected to the community as well when they get out, if there's a link. So actually, some of this might even inform your GP in the community. Aaron. Medication management plan code. Yes, I will. I will do. It's not on there. We'll share that on the share site later. There's a specific code. But if you type in Medman in the search box, it comes up. But it's a bit of jiggery pokery. And here's an example of one of my high priority reminders. So this is the usual one. There was hundreds of them, aren't there? Making records. Hep C, not to be seen alone. Mine says, seeking gabapentin in community without indication, in brackets, MRI neck showed no nerve compression or fracture. He claimed he'd broken his neck. While using heroin on top, not for opiates or gabapentinoids, C notes, summary of drug-seeking behaviour, 15/6/18. So if anyone is any doubt, they can just look at that date and I'll have a summary in there. And that is probably the best thing that we're going to see, because it's always there in the notes, it's always up front. And as Rob said, you can get your thing to flash at you with the warnings. That's in user settings. You change the user settings to display high priority reminders as a different colour, and you have to do that yourself. So I recommend doing that on an organisational level. Get rid of all these did not attend the podiatrist things that flash up and clog up the reminders thing. That's our, this is our lifeblood, this is our protection. If you're too busy saying they didn't attend for the chiropodist, you're not going to see that they're a dangerous patient. So get rid of those reminders, they're useless. When we are doing our records review, and what I'm doing is here, I'm reviewing stuff remotely a lot, or I'm doing a preparation to see a patient. So I want to know everything about them. So the night before I go to Lancaster Farms and I do my pain clinic, I log on to System 1, because I can do from home, not all of you have that ability, but it really helps me. So I log on and I kind of look at all the patients, memorise what's going on, and then I can just speak to them without looking at the screen. And actually the feedback we get is that people are feeling listened to because we know them. And so you can preempt all of that stuff that they're going to come up with because you know them inside out from their previous interactions. I searched for GABA, which covers pregabalin and gabapentin. I searched for illicit, I searched for pain if that's an issue. Diver covers diversion. Sometimes people spell it diversion or diversion, so I look for diver. And POS gives you possession, so the most recent risk assessment comes up. If you're looking for intoxication, think about searching for slur, because a lot of people will say, was seen slurring or staggering. And red picks up an awful lot of people who haven't got intoxication coded, but actually it says they have red eyes. And typically that is a really common symptom to note for people who've been using MPS. We were talking to the drug strategy team at Lancaster Farms last week, and as Rob said, the scary thing is that people consider mild intoxications to be acceptable. As far as I can see, no intoxication is acceptable when someone's on medication. So we've asked them to audit randomly the ones that aren't being reported and just jot down how many, because we think there's about 2/3 of intoxications are going astray. And it's really important to get this consistently done by the staff. So train your staff or promote intoxication as a code. You can code acute intoxication, and then you might run a search for that. You might also get your staff to task the prescribers if they see intoxication, okay? Because then it gives you a heads up, and then you have to do something about it. There is a massive burden of work to do, but I think we'd all argue with this iceberg effect, we'd rather know than not know about the iceberg. get information from the gym, from work, from the nurse, who often says, he was running up the stairs with his mate on his shoulder, despite being on pregabalin for severe back pain with nerve compression. And think about checking the medicine in possession risk assessment. If in doubt, there's a button on top of system 1 where you can just typically hit it and immediately turn someone not in possession if you're worried, which is quite useful. Now, I invented another one called PADABIT, so bear with me on this. So I was trying to think of a word that came up with the key bits that we need in the consultation and the rates review. So when you're in consultation with someone, they're bombarding you with all this, I know my own body, I'm in pain, you're going to give me something, you're not giving me any help. Sorry, all my cons are cognate, by the way, I don't know why. But anyway, and meanwhile you're getting this verbal onslaught, you're useless, and I'm thinking, quick, I've got to have some sort of plan here. So I'm padding out in the meantime. Yes, we'll have a look at that, we're here for help. So hopefully you will have done this before. So you'll be looking for polypharmacy, obviously a marker of illicit abuse or intoxication. And these are all things that raise your risk. You're looking for aggressive drug seeking, because actually that's something that we don't often take people off medicine for, but actually it's often mentioned in the drugs, in the history, and typically it is a marker of drug seeking. And I think we can certainly use that as a reasonable reason to take stuff to a safer level. So is there verbal or behavioural attempts to pressurise or threaten, intimidate prescribers on a regular basis? D for diversion. And I think we just need to be really clear about diversion. Diversion is when medication does not go to the person who it's intended for. Anything, whether it's stolen, doesn't matter. Whether it was lost, whether he flushed it down the toilet, whether he was abused and bullied for it, the point is, it is diversion. And it's not a blame thing, it's just a fact. Diversion occurs. If we put someone not in possession because of diversion, it's not a punishment, as some people do feel it is, but it's actually to try and secure that medicine. And it's really important to own the term. Diversion is basically increasing that person's risk, increasing the risk of others. And anyone who says, it's okay, it was stolen, I'm like, I don't really care, it's still unsafe, where's that gone? And also, if they haven't reported it, it's not technically being stolen. And a lot of prisoners don't dare report stuff, maybe they're being bullied, but at the same point, if they really do need that medicine, they will report it. Are they on an act? Do they have capacity to retain that medication in their possession? Have they got previous self-harm intent or impulsivity? These are all things that raise their risk. Are they being bullied? Often there'll be warnings in the notes saying patient subject to bullying or not subject to bullying. I often think we should say that a bit better, because you often scan it and think, they are or they're not, but actually it's like the not that makes the difference. In that statement. Intoxication. So are there any episodes of intoxication? Are they regular? You might stop something and then, mental health colleagues go, look, this guy's still really psychotic, and you might try and restart it again. But you've got to keep reviewing that. If someone continues to abuse MPS, then you might stop them again. Is there any notes on trading intelligence from the prison? That's something where you have to work with the drug strategy. And this is something that's interesting, because I think there's a varying degree of working together with prisons on mandatory drug testing results. Now, HMPPS actually issued a statement saying that prisons should work together with healthcare providers to identify people who are at risk of substance misuse, and that this knowledge should be shared. The best place to get that in prison is the drug strat meeting, so I suggest you turn up or get someone to go and get that information, because you cross-reference the people who are abusing with the people who are sharing cells with them, with the people who are, let's say, not in possession codeine, but who test negative on mandatory drug testing. And that's something we often forget, isn't it? That actually we should be clocking all those guys who are looking negative to the prison, but we're thinking, why is he negative? He's supposed to be taking his codeine twice a day. So we need to just take it one step further on that information. Any questions so far? Yes. Thank you.
Continuing my devil's advocate role.
Thank you.
You mentioned at the beginning of the talk a consistent approach. How can you meet the patient-centeredness, which is good practice?
100%. And I think the key thing is I'm talking here from quite a sort of authoritative, strategic point, but in consultation, you'll see from the feedback later that I am quite patient-centred. So I don't wish to come across as just no, dictatorial. I'm actually sort of saying, we need to make sure that we're looking after you. we need to make sure that we're not giving anything dangerous. You might want pregabalin, but that's a dangerous choice. So we're going to give you something else that's clinically indicated, but it may not be what you choose, because we know best about the medication. We're still here for you, and it's not just saying no to that, it's putting everything else in behind it that matters. So it's referring to physio, it's referring to the counsellors, getting the psychiatrist and the psychologist involved, working with the prison wing officer to make sure they're getting out of their cell enough to reduce boredom. So it's all those other things as well. It's a supportive approach, but at the end of the day, as the needs put up, we are responsible for the prescribing choices as prescribers alone. And so this is the sharp end. The soft end is, as a prescriber, I've been trained to be a caring GP, and I hope I still am. I hope I'm not too jaded by the prison experience. But I think there's always a balance there, I would say, between conditioning and compassion. And that's one of my other slides, is essentially we are at risk, everyone, of being conditioned and of institutionalised in the environments that we're in, because we're in them all the time. The security disappears. You don't see fences and gates anymore, do you? I don't know. When I first went into prison, I was really scared. And I've never been in prison before, hopefully. As a prescriber, I won't go in there as an inmate. But I was literally thinking, oh my goodness, look at all these high fences. I felt like I was boarding school with barbed wire. And now I don't see them. I just walk through gates, open doors, shut doors, but we can get blasé until something happens. So there's a fine line with conditioning to the patient agenda. We have to see the person at the bottom of this equation. There's a person in front of us who needs help, who needs probably a bit of more tough love than in the community, but probably needs a supportive approach. And I recognise a lot of our patients are actually lacking those key skills. So the style I use in consultation is actually quite a sort of collaborative style, sort of saying, has anyone ever told you about what's wrong with your shoulder? And you'll see the feedback later that they really like that, because they're like, no one's ever sat down and told me what's wrong with my shoulder. I just keep asking for more meds and it's not working. So I think it's a stick and carrot, it's both and. Underpinning everything, it is supposed to be excellent patient care. But this is the safety aspect that means we don't do any harm as well. So we're always in a balancing act, aren't we? Does that answer your question?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, it's difficult when you work in a prison that has a policy that says thou shalt not do such things. As a medical defence union tells me that I have to view every patient as an individual and
absolutely.
Tailor treatment.
Absolutely. I think the tailoring is the key bit. We have to offer our services, but we have to do it in a controlled environment. No one would disagree that we are in a very regulated environment. Let's move on. So this is just an example of one of my summaries. I'm sure Rob does the same thing. This was a summary I've redacted stuff to try and make it a bit less obvious. You can't see the patient name, but there's some dates there I didn't want you to see either. So essentially I've coded polydrug misuser as a major code, and I've said should not be given GABA due to PMH substance misuse. MRI net reported no sign of nerve damage or fracture in 2017. This was a notes review that then another clinician would use to then see the patient, because then we'd go back and say, you said you broke your neck on examination. Great news is you haven't broken your neck. Isn't that brilliant? The scan was normal. There's no nerve compression. You're going to be fine. You just need to get it moving a bit with some physio. So we're reviewing the community summary, and the SCR is sometimes transferred across, and we can get that information from the community notes as well. So I've said I'm concerned he was using heroin and cocaine in the community and still expects to be on gabapentin for chronic pain in back/neck. I know reluctance of previous prescribers on reception to issue gabapentin. I know he was taking a higher dose than prescribed in the community. He went to his GP who said, oh dear, you're taking too much, let's give you more. It seems counterintuitive, but I can see where that comes from. In the past he was on amitriptyline, but he said it made him feel sick. There are no examination findings in the notes to demonstrate any neuropathic symptoms. So it's unsafe to issue gabapentin, and I've added a warning on the notes. He's due to see the GP to discuss this and see if we can examine anything to find anything new. Is there a demonstration of neuropathic pain that we've missed? And advise him that we shouldn't be giving gabapentin because of his history. So these kind of summaries, they give us something to stand behind. They're legally defensible because they're evidence-based, and we're not making I think we're not making a prejudgment, but we're basically saying here are the facts as we see them so far. This is all the available information. So we've got this pathway that we've created, which is essentially from so cradle to grave or reception to discharge from prison. We're trying to capture people at reception and manage them by caseload all the way through their prison journey in our prisons. I'll just try and show you that if I can. I've had a bit of problems with projection, so bear with me. Okay, it's coming right. So, just a little bit smaller. Okay, so essentially, this is quite aspirational as well, because Durham have said to us that they will have a video link to the court cells. We're hoping that we can capture people right at the beginning and find out if they're on any medication, because that starts the process of getting that information. But the key thing is that we're managing expectations at an early stage with information, with posters, something like that. So there are posters, we've just produced them, they've been through a prison reference group, prisoners said, yeah, it looks all right, I understand it. So it's gone through that squeeze, we're putting them out there, they'll be in all areas so that everyone sees this medication awareness poster. And like a colleague from Forest Bank said, it's not a big stick to hit them with, it's about awareness. We're saying, look, in the big scheme of things, medication is one of the issues of how to access healthcare, but here are some things you should know about medication, and by the way, don't forget to tell us your allergies, that kind of thing as well. So expectation management here, we give them a leaflet. When they come into healthcare, they might be able to read, but the peer mentors will help them to read that leaflet. Then they go through a nurse-led reception, where the new screening templates are going to pick out everything and it's all going to be perfect, because System 1 is amazing, isn't it? Sorry, that was tongue-in-cheek. But, we're hoping to harness that by having buttons that do lots of different things on those reception screens once we can actually start using them more practically. But we've had some challenges with the new templates. They are what they are, we have to work with them, they've been given to us. I think we can make them work better for us. But essentially, we then try and find out, are they on any tradable medication? Are they thinking they're going to get anything? And then we can get that information from the GP. That lag time is the big factor here, because actually, the lag time to confirm that medication sometimes means that they've come off the medication by the time you find out what they're on. So we then have to make a risk-based decision on, do we restart this? They say they're on pregabalin. Yeah, they were on pregabalin, but oops, look, they're also taking illicit heroin, and they now just started methadone. Am I going to start pregabalin straight away alongside initiation of methadone? Probably not. So you've got to make a risk choice when the information comes back to you, and often that may be days later. We should be doing that within 7 days on the new guidance, and hopefully within a few days. There are different parts of this going through, as we've mentioned, the medical record review, we mentioned that. We then create an action plan, and the key thing is to create an action plan with specifics in it. And I often find that we start off with initial action, but we forget to write down how often we want to see them again, or what we've done, or who we've told. So try and tell everybody in the notes what you've done. Copy and paste your tasks into the notes, and then at least if the task disappears, you know you sent one. So we're then thinking about maybe sending a letter out to the patient saying this medicine's inappropriate. An example of that letter is here. So, this is when I've reviewed a patient's notes remotely to give them a shot across the bows that this medicine isn't going to get to them, but actually that they might have an alternative. And so this is just an initial communication to the patient. So, dear Mr. So-and-so, I'm writing up a concern for your safety. Your medication has been reviewed due to safety regulations, and we think that you're not safe to have it because delete as appropriate. So you can delete whatever's appropriate, but the key thing is you date it, you own it, and you say, right, you've been using MPS and you were seen intoxicated 15 times in the last month, or whatever else. But your point is you're demonstrating it to the patient. And this is a template you can just quickly pop up. We then remind them of the compact, and we just remind them that it's limiting our ability to give them safe treatment. And after careful review, we are either saying there's no clinical indication for the mirtazapine because you lied about it, or no, you can't have pregabalin because it's not safe with your current medicines, but there may be another option, and we're inviting you to a review on X date. And we try and be nice and kind and say, we appreciate no cause concern, please speak to healthcare if you're having trouble in the meantime. And hopefully in the meantime, they've then got an appointment booked, and they can then see the GP, who then has to have that difficult conversation face to face. But if everything's set up, you'll find you get a far better response. We've been sending out these letters at Lancaster Farms to people who've stopped medication remotely due to intoxications, and we've only had 3 people in the last few months who've been aggressive at the drugs hatch because they've been told in a letter, I had one guy in SEG who waved a piece of paper at me and said, "Oh, I've been sent this letter, this doctor's taken off the medication." I was like, "Oh, let's hear it." Oh, I stood back and said, "Oh, that's me." Yeah, anyway. So you've got to be careful about owning it, but to make sure the officers are present. So these are all the tools that we're using. These will all be available on the share site afterwards if you need them, okay? The key thing is we want to share resources to help us to actually do this better, document it well, be polite. In fact, in my appraisal this year, some of the feedback said that I was so polite to a patient they just had to agree with me when I stopped their pregabalin. Which I was like, blimey, I didn't expect to get that. It was great. We talked about multiple team meetings. Think about all the other people who are going to be involved in that, including the prison. It's really important to have them involved in there as well. We send them a compact letter if they failed it. We send them a mandatory attendance letter if they're supposed to be attending. During the consultation, I fairly early on sort of state what I'm not going to do. And at that point, a lot of people just turn up and walk away, which is quite helpful because it saves time, but they know what they're not going to be arguing about. So I might just say at the beginning, come in, sit down, right, we're here to talk about your medical problems, I want to examine you, I've read all your notes, I know everything about you, and I review, and I say a summary, and this happened, this happened, this happened, so I don't get the long, and then this, and then that, so it doesn't waste time. But then I just say, just so you know, I'm not keen on putting people at risk, so I'm not going to prescribe you, because it's not indicated in your notes. And at that point, they just look a bit dumbfounded and sometimes just walk out. But it just means that then they've got a chance to actually be warned and not waste lots of time trying to argue the toss. We may expect abuse, verbal abuse, physical threats. I know Nat, who was speaking later, was actually sort of came within inches of being headbutted by one patient recently, who later said, "Oh, I was just having a laugh," but he IEP'd him because he was like, "No, that's not a laugh for me." And we need to think about splitting the team as well, because often they'll look around the room and try and get someone else to agree with them. So we'll often have the drug worker with them, who is their advocate, their representative, or maybe even someone from IMB to make sure their rights are being represented fairly. We talked about phrases that you want to have, resources to have on hand. I've been using Catherine's posters. You might use our poster that we're going to have about Tradeable medication as well. I've learned more about doing this by having kids than I have by actually working in prison. I started having kids in 2011, and actually, and as she started to be able to talk and negotiate with me, I found that I had to offer two choices I was prepared to give. And she always creates a third, but some of our prisons aren't as bright as that. But the issue is that if you're going to offer someone, think about what your choices are before you go into that consultation, because you will be up against it, you'll be on the ropes, they'll be pummeling you with loads of questions, and you just have to blurt out, "Oh, I'll give you amitriptyline and paracetamol." But at least you've said something, So you've got it out there. You said, "And I'm not going to do anything else, but I want to be here for help." So I once had to endure sort of half an hour of verbal onslaught, and I probably should have stopped it, but the guy was a bit deaf, and the amazing thing was that after that, he never asked for anything again, and he ended up with amitriptyline appropriately for his facial pain, and he saw me a month later, having been incredibly aggressive, didn't even mention pain, talked about some spot that was on his leg. Amazing. I think the key thing is if we hold the line and we're consistent, we will end up making people safer. It's about managing expectations and consistency. P is for pharmacology, so we've already talked about that. Ian is going to talk a little bit later about co-prescribing opiates, I hope. And Rob's mentioned it already. Don't forget the metabolic side effects. I think metazapine probably should be banned just because of its metabolic side effects, let alone abuse potential, because we've given everyone diabetes. What's happening in this country? We're all overweight, we're all getting type 2 diabetes. Why are we giving medicine that creates that problem? Totally counterintuitive. And think about the man, the medicine, and the environment. And it's great to have some colleagues from CQC here, actually, because we've been working with CQC on our recent inspection, just to sort of broaden understanding of the MIPRA as this sort of new thing that's come in. What do we do with that? And the actual medical implications. It's not just about whether it's in possession or not in possession, it's what is it? We can give out lansoprazole like they're Smarties, although we probably should be reviewing that. But actually, they're only going to have diarrhea if they take too many lansoprazole. So, what's the patient's agenda? We know that they may be at risk of bullying, assaults. They may have sold their medicine before they got it, and so if you stop it, they may get assaulted. And that often happens after my consultation. So you've got to be really careful and warn them, that this will be stopping with a letter, so they give them a bit of warning. think about where you are in that pathway of review and process, and try and de-escalate. I found the best thing I ever did with Intone. One day I put the radio on in the background when I was doing some work at lunchtime. I left it on because I forgot about it. It was just quiet volume. And that afternoon, I had some really, what I thought were difficult consultations, and amazingly, they all went well. And on the way out, most of the patients said, "Oh, nice music, by the way, Doc," and it was like classic FM or something. And I just thought, well, I feel better, they feel better, something's working here. So it's a subconscious, Mozart effect or something. But anyway, try it. If you're having lots of difficult consultations, have a radio playing something quiet in the background. It just calms everything down. It would really work well. It was accidental finding, but there are maybe other top tips you've got. We need to refer. We may refer to sleep clinic, but it's only as good as the person running it, so make sure it's run by a fantastic nurse with mental health background. There's no point in having massive waiting lists for sleep clinic if all they do is then say, "I want to have software and refer back to GP." Think about using your other team members. We've got physios at podiatry. I think you're underused. There's a lot of structural problems that come from the feet up into the back that we should be using more. Acupuncture is something I'm sad to see off the NICE guidance for back pain, partly because I'm a believer, because I have acupuncture for my back and it really helps. And but also it helps people come off substances, and there's a NADA protocol in the ear. We did have that, it worked really well. I wish we could have that back. I don't know whether we can lobby for that, but there's at least 30% of people who do benefit from acupuncture, and there's very little dangerous side effects from it. All these people need to work with. The key thing I say is, if you're referring to a pain specialist, guide them in your letter so that they don't just come back with the default knee-jerk. He tells me pregabalin works, so I'll stack them on pregabalin, because then you're just going to create another fight. I often say, please examine the patient and document your findings. I'd like to know if there's any evidence of neuropathic pain from an expert. And I then also challenge board choices and say, I can't see any findings that demonstrate neuropathic pain. Can you advise what made you decide this choice? And that might be a bit cheeky, but no one's ever come back and said you're being rude, and I think you should be polite. Think about investigations, and don't forget vitamin D, which potentiates pain, and low mood, and general sort of crap life syndrome in prison. I think we probably should put it in the water. Empowerment, this is the bit where it is patient-centred. We want to make sure that we're progressing away from illness behaviour and into recovery, rehabilitation, and release. So we need to deal with these underlying problems. The fog of substances and medication often stops people from dealing with that. We need to address the psychological aspects and name them. You appear to be really stuck on pregabalin. Why is that? And just ask some open questions. People actually just say, it really makes me feel normal. Why is that? Well, because I've got these flashbacks from being abused. Okay, so have you had any counselling for the abuse? I know there's a massive waiting list for tertiary stuff, but at least we can recognise stuff and show people there is a way out. And think about documentation. Diversion, intoxication, 5 Ws, although one of them is an H because it's who. So where, why, what, when, who, for both of those. And don't forget your action plan. This is just a last salutary tale. I was looking on Twitter and I found this slide. So this is about scans. Treat the man, I work in mostly male prisons as well, so I'm not being sexist, forgive me. So disc bulging, 87% of people aged 20 to 70 have disc bulging. This is quite shocking. Disc degeneration. So 20-year-olds, 37% of 20-year-olds have disc degeneration, 96% of 80-year-olds. Knees, OA, we've got 43% of those are over 40 have OA on a knee X-ray, and up to 14% under 40. These are staggering things that we're often treating people for. So we have to look at the man and say, hang on, you had this injury 15 years ago. Why has it suddenly started 5 years ago when you came to prison that you started seeking treatment for it? And we know what treatment they're seeking, don't we? But it's salutary. So think of the whole team approach. We need to have a culture shift to adding warnings to the notes. And we should chase down that detail, or get admin to chase it down for you. It is a laborious thing, but once you've drawn your line in the sand, it's rare that you can cross it again, because your colleagues will support you, they'll see the summary, they won't go there. The poster, let's see if I've got a copy of that. Oops, hang on. Is that it? No. I'll bring it up later, but there's a poster we've produced which is basically all about medication awareness and leaflets for patients. I think I've run out of time for cases because we ran a little bit into the coffee break. But we've talked about various different issues today in terms of cases. I could go through some cases in 5 minutes, or would you like to stop and have lunch? So hands up for lunch. Okay, a couple of people. Okay, well first of all, are there any questions?
Ben,
No?
can I just ask you a question?
Please.
Methadone allergy.
Mm.
How often does it truly occur? I suspect hardly ever. And what evidence do you need to prove that? Because this is something that obviously people will tell us in the midst of time.
Yeah.
That,
Typically, so the question is, what is methadone allergy common? And is it a defined thing? Does it exist? I think you can have an allergic reaction to any drug. Typically, when people say they're allergic to something, it means they don't like it. So I'd be looking for evidence of an anaphylactic reaction or a delayed hypersensitivity reaction in physical, objective terms. You know, did they start tongue swelling? Did they get a rash? Were they having breathing difficulty, not just respiratory suppression? So I think,
If you suggest that they,
yeah.
if they tell you they're not very allergic and you then suggest to them that that means they can never have any other opioids ever,
They'll retract that, yeah.
amazingly, they find that they're
yes.
allergic.
And you can often track back to on system, which is a great thing about looking at past
Absolutely, track
medications.
back.
That they've actually had it since they were diagnosed.
100%.
Yeah.
And you often see that with NSAIDs as well, don't you? Allergic to ibuprofen. I can't have ibuprofen. Well, you've just had diclofenac. Oh, it's not the same thing. Oh, actually it is. So, you know, we can often catch that, can't we? So the question was about opiate allergy, I suppose. Is there an opiate allergy? I think the answer is challenge that. Any other questions? No. Okay. I'm going to leave the cases there because I think we need to have lunch and we need to decompress. But thank you all. We've got 45 minutes for lunch. We're coming back with psychiatry in the afternoon. Thank you.